Yo, what's good, guys? This is our first video on programming. So I'm just gonna go through this content that I wrote down, and I'm gonna make it super fast. So let's get started. Um, so in programming, you have to write code, and how you write code is with programming languages. And there's a bunch of programming languages, but in this series we're gonna focus on C++ because that's what I know and am best with. So if we look here, this is a list of like all the programming languages, and you can see like there's a lot. There's a massive amount of them. So getting back to the subject at hand, we write our code in whatever programming language we choose, which will be C++ in this series. And then after that, we need to compile it, and I'll show you how to do that. But we compile it, and it's compiled into a assembly language. And right now, the only one I know or am kind of familiar with is MIPS architecture instruction set, but we'll get into that at a later point. So it's now in assembly language, and those are just a bunch of instructions that are closer to what the computer can understand, but they're still in English. And then once it's in this format, it's assembled into machine language, which are just ones and zeros, also called binary. And this is what the computer can understand, because if you think about it, computers can only understand on or off, and we represent on with 1, off with 0. Because the wire, which computers are made of, are either on or off, 1 or 0. Okay, and then the last subject for this video is the 3 things that are similar between all these programming languages, or at least the ones I know of. So variables are one of them. You can have the primitive variables, which are like int, char, double, float, all those. And then you can have the user created or the programmer made objects, which are like variables, but they're called objects, and they can contain a lot of variables, and they can also contain functions. And classes and structs, they're the same thing except for one tiny thing, and we'll talk about that later. So the second thing that's common is functions. Functions are used a lot within programming. There's a bunch of different ways to implement functions, but the basic thing is functions have to have a return type. And yeah, so this is the format of functions. As you can see, this is just an example. So this type could be anything, but I chose int because that's simple. And then this is the name of the function. Then you have curly braces, and actually we should have where my pen go? We have should have parentheses there. So we have our code in the curly braces, and then it returns an integer. The integer will be a variable that you define in your code inside the curly braces. Okay, and then the third thing that's common between all languages is libraries. So if you ever see hashtag include something, that means you're including a library that's somewhere on your computer. Like when you go and download C++ or Java or whatever it is, it's going to include a bunch of libraries that you can use in your programs. So iostream is a really popular one. We'll talk about that in a separate video. And there's 2 types of libraries. There's statically linked and dynamically linked. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll get into all these topics at later points. See you then, or talk to you then. Bye.